because I'd be writing a fit vegan book this year. My brain finally came at peace, being able to move with intention versus reactivity. I received a text from my assistant when we were heading back to Los Angeles telling me, "Are you guys safe?" I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she's like, "Los Angeles is on fire," basically. Press on the pleasure side of the balance through bad behavior, eating shit food or whatever it may be that does bring you some pleasure that's not healthy for you. You kind of reset your internal calibration where you need more of it. All right, little interruption before we get into the podcast. Did you know that over 60% of you that listen to this show regularly aren't subscribed to the channel? So if you could do me a favor and click on the subscribe button, because it really helps the channel grow and really helps me get bigger guests on the show and helps me elevate the quality of the show. So again, I run these episodes ad-free for that reason, because I want to give you the best experience possible without any interruption. So this is my little interruption right here. So if you could do me a favor and subscribe, click on the notification bell so you can be notified when the episode goes live. I appreciate it very much. Enjoy the episode. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. This is my first podcast back from my first digital detox of 2025. So this is going to be a rusty one. The first episode that I record is always rough to record. I'm always a little bit more awkward on camera. So bear with me as we get through this episode. You know, for this year, I would like to make the Thursday episodes around 20 minutes so that they are clear and concise. On some of them, I will have things prep. On some of them, I won't. I just want to share some thoughts that I have or things that I'm noticing in terms of people's transformation and what I think might be helpful for you guys in the moment. And so I thought for this podcast, I would just keep it casual, right? Kind of go over some of the lessons that I've learned from my last digital detox that I just went through. I'm basically like 4 or 5 days out of the digital detox and back into work now. And what's interesting to me is this is what I did 4 2 years ago. I did 5 last year. So I'm 9. This is my 10th digital detox. And every time I go away for 1 week and I completely disconnect from online and I come back, I always come back with what I find to be for myself very valuable lessons, some extra insights into myself and how to progress into my life. And also to see if I am still progressing in alignment with how I want to live my life and what I want to create and the impact that I want to have. And so I just jotted down a few notes here of things that kind of have come up during this detox that I want to share with you all, which again, I want to say that I appreciate all the emails and messages that I receive from you guys that have tried doing digital detoxes and have found great benefits to them. You know, some of you have just done 1 day completely offline. Some of you have done a weekend. Some of you have done 3 weeks. I did have some people try a full 1 week and they found it incredible. They found that they were able to better reconnect with themselves. And that's kind of what I found to be true for myself as well. And so, you know, if you've been following any of the news online, probably heard that Los Angeles is on fire at this time of recording, which is going to be a week prior to when this goes live. The wind finally died down, and I know they're still looking to contain the Palisade fires. The Eaton fire, I believe, it's like 95% contained at this point. The Kenneth fire is 100% contained, which I was the one that was closest to my house. But when Ivy and I left for digital detox, we headed over to Santa Barbara to celebrate our 1-year wedding anniversary. And we had an incredible time out there. It was beautiful weather. We were able to go back to the beautiful Santa Barbara courthouse where we got married, got to take some photos again, and got to eat some great food. And we went axe throwing, shovel throwing. If you don't know what that is, definitely recommend looking into it. It was really fun. And we just, read, hung out, walked around, did things that didn't involve our phone. And it was incredible. But I did receive a text from my assistant, I believe on Tuesday when we were heading back to Los Angeles, telling me, "Are you guys safe?" I was like, "We feel great. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about." And she's like, "Los Angeles is on fire," basically. And that's when I decided to go on Google, because I realized that I don't listen to the news and I wasn't on social media. So I didn't get any updates at all from anything that was happening. So that's when we went on Google and we saw the extent of the fires already at that point. I believe it's like Tuesday it started, I believe. So we basically were alerted that there was fire, and we were actually heading back home. And the Palisades, maybe 30 minutes of driving from where we are. So, in my book, from someone that grew up in Canada, that's close. It's very close to be close to a massive fire. We're not used to that back in Canada. We'll get really cold weathers, but not massive fires like this. And so one thing that the lesson that I got out of it for Ivy and I, and it was beautiful to see us work together as a team, was just to be adaptable. When we were in Santa Barbara or when we came back home, what we needed to prepare for the fires. Just as a fun fact, when I was in Santa Barbara, I told Ivy, like, I feel like we should go camping. I think it would be a beautiful opportunity to relax and just be away from electronics. And so I went to REI and I bought everything. I bought a tent, I bought, mattress, I bought everything to go camping. And then the next day, that's when I got the text that everything was on fire. And like, we should probably hold off on going camping this week. So we will be going camping at another point, just not that point. But it really showed us to be adaptable, because when we got home, it was like, okay, well, fires are close, we're monitoring it. I'm not familiar at all with any of this. And then there was the Kenneth fire that started, I was like maybe 20 minutes from our house. So that was kind of getting closer. It was getting bigger. The winds were kind of heading in our direction. And so it forced Ivy and I to kind of just go through our house and pack our things and see, like, if we had to evacuate, basically, what are the things that we value that we would bring with us? And it was quite interesting. We pretty much packed within 30 minutes. And there was not any time rush, but we packed within 30 minutes. I had a big suitcase, which honestly, half of it was like my lighting equipment for the podcast. I had my hard case that had all my microphones and my podcast equipment, and my backpack that had my laptop, some books and some things like that. I took some photo albums and my expensive watches and some other things that I brought with me that I could resell if needed. But it was very interesting to see how we were able to condense all of our things into these few bags, and same thing for Ivy. And the next morning, after doing that exercise and packing all of our things and just being on high alert, basically, we had our phone on in case there was an alert that we needed to evacuate. The next morning, I was journaling, because I've been journaling for me the past 6 months every morning. And I just realized how interesting it was that I was very comfortable with just bringing these few things with me. And I looked around, there's still my desk, there's still all my big light for the podcast, there's still a lot of things in the house. My Fit Vegan jersey behind me, all those things are the cool setup that we have in the house. And I was like, they are just things. And at the end of the day, there are things that bring comfort and that help to make the home a home, but they are not what makes a home, right? That's wherever Ivy and I are. And so it was just cool to see, like, all these things are great. They're just there to kind of enhance comfort in our life, but we don't need them at the end of the day. And, personally, I was kind of a little bit excited to get to travel a little bit, because I love to travel. So I was like, great, we're living out of a suitcase again, which we've done for a very long time. But ultimately, I want to pass off my, condolences to people that lost people in a fire, that lost their home in a fire. Like, it's pretty rough. We didn't really obviously drive down there because there are still fires and we have no reason to head in that direction. I don't want to be nosy and drive out there. But yeah, we had some friends that lost their homes, people at the gym that lost their homes. And so it's very, very sad. We're very blessed with where we live to be in a secure place, ultimately. So one big lesson out of all that was to be adaptable and realize, like, we know that stuff is stuff, but until you're put in a situation where you really have to narrow down what you would bring with you, I was like, wow, I would really only need these few things. Like, yeah, I would lose my collection of books and all that stuff, but I can always rebuy the books. I can always reprint the photos that we have on the wall. I can always rebuy some of those things. So it wouldn't be too much of an issue. So yeah, just being adaptable was a big lesson for this week. And frankly, this digital detox was very hard compared to the last few ones that I did. And we traveled less. So typically when we do digital detox, we would go somewhere. Like we went to New York at one point. We went to the Hamptons. We went to Hawaii for another one. So we travel somewhere. So there was some type of distraction / entertainment from being in a new place and, going to explore the volcanoes in Hawaii, or just a day of travel of being on a flight and being on the go and having to coordinate for the travels, which kind of leaves your brain feeling occupied. But because there was the fires, we basically just stayed home once we came back from Santa Barbara. So from Tuesday to Sunday, we stayed home because in case we needed to evacuate. So it really forced us to stay home and be in our home environment and not touch electronics. So I had a lot of time to do nothing. And I think that's potentially why it was more challenging, as I'm kind of sharing it now, is to not be on my phone. I had a really, I would notice I'd pick up my phone and I would just look at old text. I would pick up my phone and I'd just open up Safari, or I'd look at my investment account, or I look at different, just to kind of do something on my phone. And at one point I was like, okay, I just need to shut it off and put it in a different room to not look at it, because I was looking for some form of entertainment. And when I noticed that, that's when I put the extra boundary of closing it and putting it in a different room. But it was interesting. That one was a really hard one because I was in my home environment and I had quote unquote nothing to do. Like, yes, we would go to the gym. I was able to read a full book during my digital detox, which I really enjoyed, which I'm going to talk as the next point. So I was able to read more. I was able to write more. We didn't spend too much time outdoors because it was very windy, and there was talks about the air quality not being that great. So yeah, just like stayed home and did nothing. And I knew that that's what I needed. So it was beautiful that it happened that way, but mentally it was hard. My hands were like fidgety. I was looking to pick up something. I would just sit at the dining table and just sit there and look at the living room and look at the photos. And I would just reflect and be in my head. And I noticed myself being lost in thoughts for like 30 minutes. And I came out of it. I was like, wow, that was a beautiful journey that I just went on that I didn't need my phone for. And Ivy and I pulled out the board games. We played a lot of Monopoly, which she kicked my butt on the first game, but I got her back on the second one. But she really kicked my butt on the first game. So we're just having fun playing board games, reading, and writing. So yeah, that was a hard one because I wasn't distracted with traveling or being in a new place and wanting to explore. But it was very peaceful and very much needed. I even wrote in my notes here that about on the 5th day of the digital detox, my brain finally came at peace. To me, I always operate with a sense of urgency. When I wake up in the morning, there's things that I want to do. We have, our team has expanded. We're working on different projects. We're giving back a lot to cancer patients. Like, there's a lot of things that are going on. So there's always like an underlying tension in my head of like, let's move forward, let's do something. And there's always I don't want to use the word anxiety, but like anxiousness/tension towards there's things that need to be done and we need to make progress towards these things. And about on the 5th day of the digital detox of not using social media or looking at emails or Slack or YouTube, any of those things, that completely went away. And I just had a lot of beautiful peace in my mind. There wasn't like that tension, which felt great. And to be fair, I'm 4 days out of the digital detox and the tension is coming back a little bit because I'm getting back into the rhythm of things. But it was beautiful to just take a break from that tension in my head. But it did take 5 days. It always takes me a little bit of time. So I say digital detox for 1 day is beautiful. 3 days is beautiful. But a full week, you'll really get the full extent of the benefits that come from it. And I'm very excited to try a 2-week digital detox later on this year to just see how my body responds to it and my brain responds to it and how my head feels, and how more peaceful I feel after, because at that 5-day mark, I basically have 2 weeks left to the digital detox. And then I'm back into work, looking at emails, Slack, answering the team, coaching clients. And then I'm excited to see what will happen mentally at the 2-week period, right? And see how that's going to feel. So anyways, the point for this one is that it was harder than usual because I wasn't traveling, which was on purpose as well, because Ivy and I mentioned that we wouldn't travel for the first 2 digital detox of the year. And then we would travel for the third one, basically midway through the year. Now, while I was away, I was able to read the book Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna. I can't remember her last name, but I saw her on the podcast Diary of a CEO. And I thought it was such an incredible conversation that within 15 minutes of listening to the episode, I bought the book, got it on Amazon, and brought it with me to Digital Detox and read the entire thing. And obviously, it's a book about dopamine addiction. She talks a lot about drug use and all of those things, but there's also elements of talking about food addiction, exercise addiction. She talks about the pain-pleasure balance and how the body comes in to offset when you have too much pleasure. That's why people have a period of down. For example, after they do really intense drugs, they feel good for a short period of time, but the body tries to bring it back to homeostasis after. And so it kind of shifts the balance completely on the other side. And the body doesn't have a way to regulate it going back to homeostasis in one go. So instead, what it does is it press heavily on the balance side, on the pain side, sorry. So now the balance, instead of being heavy on the pleasure side, is heavy on the pain side. And then after a while, it readjusts basically to being in homeostasis. It doesn't have the ability to just in one go neutral. And so I thought it was very interesting. And there was also talks in the book about how most people focus on pressing on the pleasure side of the balance, which ultimately always leads, depending on how intense the pleasure is, to the pain side being pressed on more heavily to offset the pleasure that was attained. But you also talked about pressing on the pain side of the balance on purpose to kind of reset the pleasure side, to get the pleasure out of it. As an example that they used was cold showers, ice bath. So you put yourself consciously in a situation of, quote unquote pain, because it's uncomfortable to be in icy water. But then once you come out of it, for those of you that have done it, you feel absolutely incredible. I still do them daily. I enjoy them. And that kind of helps to retrain. You get that boost of pleasure after. And she talks about it kind of retraining your body to recalibrate that pain to pleasure balance. And again, highly recommend you read the book so you get more in depth. But like, I'm just sharing the points that really hit me. And there's another one where she shared the more you press on the pleasure side of the balance. So, for example, again, it could be drugs, but in our scenario, let's use food because most people stress eat or addicted to sugar or processed food. The more you press on the pleasure side of the balance, so the more you eat, the salty, the sweet, the junk food, and all of these things, like, yes, your body will press on the pain side of the balance after to kind of trying to rebalance it out. And that's why you feel like shit after you've eaten all of this food and you put weight on and all those, those negative effects to it. But the thing is, the more often you press on the pleasure side of the balance, the more you're recalibrating that internal scale, if you will, that internal balance, where you need more pleasure to feel pleasure and you need less pain to feel more pain. So your body, it's kind of like caffeine. Once you are used to drinking caffeine, you need more and more and more caffeine to feel the thing. So the more you press on the pleasure side of the balance through bad behavior, eating shit food or whatever it may be that does bring you some pleasure that's not healthy for you, you kind of reset your internal calibration where you need more of it. So you need more junk food, more salt, more sweet, more drugs, more whatever to feel that pleasure that you initially felt at the beginning. It's just like when you're used to drinking coffee and you drink more and more of it, you need more and more of it to feel the energy that you used to get when you drank your first cup of coffee. And so that happens. But also on the flip side, the body has to press harder and harder and harder to trying to recalibrate on the pain side. And so your body becomes more sensitive to pain. And so you need less pain to feel pain. So you get anxious more easily, you get depressed more easily, you get bummed out more easily, which I thought was very interesting. So she talks about going on some of those, dopamine detox, kind of like what I do in my digital detoxes, because that's pretty much what the purpose of them is. It's just like, let's just reset the brain. Because when you do grab your phone and you go on social media and you look at the likes and the comments and all those things, as much as you don't think that it affects you, it has been engineered for that reason. And so going on some of those cleanses, and she talks about going for a whole month, right? Obviously, at this point, cannot go away for a whole month because we do have, 11 plus employees. We have a lot of members and there's a lot of things going on. But I'm sure at a certain point in the building of Fit Vegan and the impact we're trying to have, I will be able to have someone lead and be in that position to take a month. But she talks about extended periods of time going without it to kind of reset that pain pleasure balance in the brain so that you don't need as much pleasure to feel pleasure and your body isn't as sensitive to pain. So you don't get as overwhelmed as easily. And I just can see that to be true in what I hear from people around me, what I hear from members, what I hear from friends. Like, life sucks, there's all these things, but I'm like, your life is incredible, right? And sometimes I find myself saying that too, but then I look around, I'm like, my life's pretty freaking great. Why do I need more pleasure to feel more pleasure, right? And if I go down the rabbit hole of always being on my phone and always being obsessed with emails and all of these things, then I do notice that I need less pain to feel pain. The slightest thing will make it feel like someone pressed heavily on the pain side of the balance. And so doing these recalibration kind of strengthens you to technically need more pain to actually feel the pain. So you're more tolerant, you're more resilient, I think would be the best way to express it. But also, you need less pleasure to feel pleasure. So when a small good news happen, talk about gratitude as an example, then you do feel great from it. Because a lot of people have a lot of beautiful things going on for them in their life. And they beat themselves up and feel like shit, but they don't realize the extent of how beautiful their life is. And so honestly, highly recommend the book. I think every time I'm done reading a book, I should do a little podcast like this, kind of sharing the takeaways from it, because that was a really powerful one. We actually reached out to her team as well to have her on the show. And we're looking at booking her in throughout the summer because she does have a busy schedule. But yeah, I would be very intrigued and interested in having a conversation with her about the pain pleasure balance when it comes to food, when it comes to exercise, because some people can have some type of dopamine addiction to doing too much exercise, right? I've met several of them in the Ironman and triathlon space. And so there can be an addiction to sports when you press too much on the pain side, right? There can be a downside to that as well. So which was a very interesting chapter in the book, but hopefully we get to record with her. So, one thing that I could ask from you guys that helps to make these things happen is if you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel, like, comment. If you're listening on audio podcast, leave a review, subscribe to the channel, follow the channel, because it's 2025. It is a numbers game. If I go to a big author or a big speaker or a big guest, they do ask me undoubtedly, how many downloads do you have? How many subscribers do you have? And we have a very loyal following, a very loyal community for Fit Vegan, which is beautiful. And I want to continue to grow it so that I can keep having some of those incredible guests, right? There's some top doctors in a plant-based space that I currently cannot have on the show because we're not meeting the minimum requirement for numbers. And we have great numbers, but what they're asking is really high for it to be worth their time. And so any support that you can offer through either subscribing yourself or sharing the link with other people, making this podcast more discovered, would be appreciated, because I love having those conversations with guests. They are as valuable for me as they are for you guys when you listen to them. The questions that I ask are genuine. I want to learn from them because I always assume that I know nothing, and I want to learn from every single one of them because everyone's an expert in their field. And so that was kind of the little takeaways from the digital detox that I went on with Ivy, was just adaptability. This one was really challenging because I was actually forced to stay put versus kind of travel around and explore. Great book, Dopamine Nation. And actually started reading another book. I think it's called Tiny Habits is what it's called. I'm about halfway through that one within a matter of like 3-4 days. So really good. Definitely been reading more on these digital detoxes. And yeah, just the fact that it took me about 5 days to feel that mental peace. But once I felt it, like I knew that I was in that place because there was just that peacefulness in my head, and being able to move with intention versus reactivity was a really beautiful sensation. And so when I came back online on Monday and worked on my things, caught up on emails, members, had meetings with the team on Tuesday, did all these things. The team did an incredible job handling things while I was gone. So there was nothing really for me to handle at that point. So it was a very peaceful return. But we do have big projects that we are working on. We have a few things that we hopefully will be launching in early February for some of you. We will be launching another project at the end of Q1 and a bigger project at the end of Q2. Those are kind of like our 3 big projects that we're working on. I'm not going to say what they are, so we have to stay tuned for those. Just say cool things are in the work for those of you that have been wanting to work with us to a different capacity than our one-on-one coaching, that want to get more value, that want to be a part of a community, that want to learn from experts, that want to know all the secrets. We got cool things coming. And one thing that I did put out there for the world is I'd be writing a Fit Vegan book this year, which I've started writing. It's very interesting. I had some great calls from some vegan friends of mine that are New York's best time-selling author to learn from them, because I don't like to have to figure out everything by myself when I can just hire, pay, or jump on a call with someone that has done it and I can learn from their mistakes. That's how I approach everything in life. So I'm excited. I'm going to have some of those calls this week. So very excited to be working on that. And yeah, I think that's going to be it for this podcast episode. Just a lot of great lessons from this digital detox. If I, can incline you guys to just do one thing potentially in this quarter, is to try to do at least one day without any form of social media. You can delete Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all of these things that distract you from your phone, right? That's what I do every time I go on digital detox. I delete everything from my phone. no email, no Slack, no social media whatsoever. That way there is nothing to do on the phone, right? And don't worry, if you delete Instagram from your phone and you re-download it, it just logs you back into your Instagram account. You don't have to re-log into everything. All right. I've done this enough times at this point. You just delete it, you re-download it, bam, you're back into your account. And don't worry, you won't miss out on anything. Life will continue to move on. You will be fine if you miss a day or 5 days or 3 days or a week or whatever it may be. If I can be fine, and this is kind of how we run Fit Vegan is through online, because we've built an incredible team, you're absolutely going to be fine, especially if you don't work online. There's nothing serving you from being on those social media platforms. And so that would be my encouragement for you guys, to just commit to at least doing a 24 hours, a 48 hours, a 72 hours, to see how you feel after, and notice the difference of what it feels like to just sit with yourself in your thoughts, right? Bring a pen and paper, journal, write whatever's going through your head. You're going to be able to work through a lot of incredible things, which ultimately will help to bring more internal peace to yourself. So hope you guys enjoyed this little episode. Again, on Thursdays, I want to make them casual like this. Just sometimes it will have topics. Sometimes it's going to be just me sharing whatever I want to share for the week, because I'm always looking to improve myself and helping others around me. And so whenever I learn something cool, I like to bring it to you guys. That's kind of what I do in our weekly newsletter as well. I always try to grab a lesson from my week and write the lesson and a step of action for people that are struggling with the same thing to be able to move forward with it. And so if you aren't subscribed to the newsletter yet, it's absolutely free. I only send one email every single Saturday morning. There's going to be a link in the description, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube, for you to register for the free newsletter. Again, I just send one every single Saturday with some awesome lessons, some cool fitness, mindset, and nutrition tips to help you on your transformation. And obviously, we're going to be doing some master classes this year. We're going to be doing some in-person workshops. So you will be notified through that medium whenever those things are coming. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. And I will see you on the Tuesday show, because we have a special one with an incredible guest. Take care, everyone.